Whether you're in a rut with your training or you've noticed that there are aspects missing from your fitness and performance, the right training tools can make a huge difference in your workouts. While ideally we'd be able to get a complete workout using only our own bodies, it's also true that there are some things you simply can't achieve without the right tools. There's no substitute to squatting under a heavy barbell, for instance. With that in mind, the right tools can be fantastic for challenging yourself in new and interesting ways, to force your body to adapt and to make your workouts more varied, interesting and challenging.
The thing is, if you look at most home gyms, all someone's going to have is a pair of dumbbells and maybe a barbell. And even when we go to the gym to train, we'll often just stick to the dumbbells and the barbells. You might get the odd person who loves kettlebell training and that's their world and they do loads of kettlebell training. Or maybe you'll get someone who just loves bodyweight training and they do loads and loads of calisthenics. But I think there's a huge benefit in combining all these different types of training in order to get all the different types of performance or different types of strength. In order to do that, using lots of different types of equipment can be a really good method. And so in this video I'm going to break down some of my favourite training equipment, some of my favourite training tools that I use regularly in order to train across as many disciplines and modalities as possible. If you want to learn more about any of this stuff, then check out the link in the description down below to the written version of this video. There you'll also be able to find links to all of the different products, and you'll also find a link to my ebook and training program down there, Super Functional Training. That's all about training in different ways and combining different disciplines in order to make your workouts more awesome. So if you like this, then I think that'll be right up your street.
Fat grips are an example of something that is simple yet highly effective. These are essentially grips that you can attach to a dumbbell, kettlebell, barbell or even a pull-up bar in order to make the handle slightly wider. The result is that it's tougher to grip onto said bar and you therefore get more benefit for your grip from any exercise. These are small enough to throw in a bag and to bring to the gym, and they come in a variety of different sizes. You can also get knockoff variants which are a little bit cheaper. A weighted vest is a fantastic tool for increasing the challenge on any bodyweight move. This can also be extremely useful for progressing and achieving more difficult calisthenics moves. For example, if you're trying to get the muscle up, then performing explosive weighted pull-ups is a great way to do that. Weighted vests also increase the cardiovascular challenge of nearly any activity. Go for a walk and throw on a vest and you'll burn more calories.
This here is the steel bow from Bullworker, which they very kindly sent me, full disclosure. When you get to 100,000 subscribers, it turns out people send you loads of free stuff. This is a device for training with isometrics and specifically overcoming isometrics. That means that you're pushing or pulling against an immovable force. In this case, you can push it, you can pull it, you've got these straps, and it's built sturdily so that it won't break and you can give it your all. The reason we do this is that it's very similar as far as your neural drive is concerned to trying to lift more than your 1 rep max. In other words, you can improve your muscle fiber recruitment and this could lead to strength gains. This is a technique that was extremely popular with old-time strongmen, and Bullworker has been around an awfully long time. I particularly like this thing because it's really small and light. You can throw it into a bag nice and easily. You'll hold each static contraction for about 6 seconds, rest and then repeat. And you want to train ideally at 3 different joint angles in order to make sure that you cover the full range of motion on any given exercise or movement.
A club bell, not to be mistaken for this slightly lighter and wooden Indian club, is a large heavy club that you can swing around and lift in a similar manner to a kettlebell. Like a kettlebell, the centre of gravity is offset away from the handle. The difference here is the way you grip the club, and actually the lever is also slightly longer, though you have the option to choke your hand up and down the handle to alter the amount of resistance you want to work with. Club bells are fantastic for developing core muscles and balance as your body fights against the momentum in the constantly changing angles of resistance. They're excellent for your grip, and they also help to open up the joints in the shoulders for developing mobility and joint strength. But the kettlebell is probably still the don when it comes to weirdly shaped dumbbell alternatives. Kettlebells are useful for training strength for angles you can't easily hit with a barbell and for a range of movements, such as the Turkish get-up. Kettlebells also lend themselves very well to explosive full body movements, especially using the legs, and this makes them a great alternative to a barbell and a rack when you don't have the space. Finally, thanks to the momentum you can build up with a kettlebell and keep going, they're actually ideal for metabolic conditioning, combining resistance training with cardio.
Next up, resistance bands. Resistance bands can be used for all kinds of different types of training. I've lately been using mine just for mobility stuff like shoulder dislocates. The great thing about resistance bands is you can stick them in your pocket or you can tie onto your door handle and you can literally use them anywhere. Of course, they can be used to provide a small amount of resistance for certain exercises which don't require particularly heavy weights. You can use resistance bands to provide assistance in a range of different exercises, particularly bodyweight exercises such as pull-ups or planche or rows, or you can use them to make your movements more difficult by providing additional resistance or accommodating resistance. Accommodating resistance means that the weight gets heavier as it gets closer to the point where you're strongest. So for instance, in the bench press, by attaching resistance bands to the bar and then to the ground, it becomes heavier as you push it up.
Training masks came under some flack for false advertising. The problem was that they didn't really offer the simulated high altitude that they often promised in marketing, but that doesn't make them useless. In fact, training masks are awesome tools for training and developing the respiratory muscles, such as the intercostals and the diaphragm, that we use for taking in oxygen. They can therefore help to improve our VO2 max and work capacity, not to mention increasing calorie burn during training. Studies show that this can improve cognitive performance over time by improving oxygen supply to the brain. A similar device is the inspiratory muscle trainer. This is a small device that you stick in your mouth so you can use it whilst you're typing or doing anything else. See my content on Aquaman training for more on this. Using dip bars and parallettes allows you to work on movements such as planche and handstand press-ups using a neutral wrist position, stronger grip on the ground, and greater clearance for moving your legs. This makes those moves slightly easier to learn and sustain, in turn allowing you to develop advanced calisthenics skills. Learning moves like the planche and its various progressions is something I highly recommend. Even if you never accomplish these feats, you'll develop a lot of body awareness, mobility and strength simply from trying.
Dip bars and parallettes are an entire gym that fits in the corner of your room. I actually leave my dip bars in my study, my bio lab, and whenever the computer's loading or I just want to take 5, I'll go and do some dips or some tuck planche presses, and this is a great way for me to grease the groove at the same time as just moving all the time, which I talked about in my last video as being extremely important. Dip bars in particular are very versatile because you can also use them for pulling movements like inverted press-ups, even things like front levers if you hang off just one bar.
Gymnastics rings are rings that hang from a bar, a set of dip bars or anything else, in order to allow you to use a range of movements such as dips, ring push-ups, ring pull-ups, bodyweight rows, inverted push-ups, various support holds and much more. Hang them higher up and you can even practice things like ring muscle-ups, the iron cross or Maltese. Rings require a huge amount of control and strength, as you'll be forced to balance at the same time as performing pushing and pressing movements. They also again allow you to train at unusual angles and positions that will build strength and endurance in connective tissue, and help you work towards more advanced skills. Because they can be used for pulling or pushing, they're also among the most versatile training tools you can purchase.
Another option that's similar to gymnastic rings is a rope. A rope is one of the cheapest things you can buy, and it's fantastic for training all sorts of things. I've bought a pull-up bar that has small loops at the top, then I also bought myself carabiners and I looped them through this rope, which also had a metal ring at the end, and I was able to do lots of rope climbing, things like tricep extensions, bodyweight rows. There's all kinds of cool things you can do with a rope. Rope climbing in particular is a brilliant way to train your grip strength, to train your bicep strength, elbow tendon strength, your core, and it's a really practical movement that actually mimics something that you might one day have to do in a real life situation if you're a ninja, which is cool. That's what we're going for here.
Something else that's extremely useful that I think most people can benefit from to some extent is a fitness tracker. So fitness trackers have lots of benefits. For one, if you're trying to lose or gain weight, then being able to track roughly your calorie expenditure and then combine this with information from something like MyFitnessPal to see how many calories you're taking in can be really useful. This is an estimate at best, but for most people it's going to be accurate enough to help them achieve their goals. I also think that a fitness tracker is pretty much an absolute must if you're interested in running, or a running watch of course. So in this regard, a fitness tracker will allow you to see progress. You'll be able to measure the distance that you run, the speed that you run. You can measure your resting heart rate, but at the same time getting a live update of your heart rate is really useful if you're going to be doing things like zone training. So if you want to stay within a certain heart rate zone to burn calories, or if you're interested in doing a threshold run. I basically wouldn't recommend that anyone get into running seriously without having some kind of watch to track that kind of stuff. It can also be useful, of course, for things like sleep tracking. The Oura ring is really good for that. I really like to have a fitness tracker that also lets me install apps on it. I've got a time wrap on there at the moment where I just swipe down once and then it sets a timer for 30 seconds. This is extremely useful, for instance, when I'm using isometric holds. So if I want to do a planche progression, for instance, or if I'm trying crow pose or handstands, then I can just swipe up and that timer is ready to go wherever I may be.
The Halo 2. Finally, I'm going to throw you a curveball, the Halo Sport 2. This is another device that I was sent recently to review, to try out,
and it's something completely different that many of you won't have tried. Basically, this is a TDCS device, or a neuroprimer. TDCS standing for transcranial direct current stimulation. Essentially what this does is it runs a small current, a small charge, through your brain. And the idea is that it's increasing the resting potential of your brain cells. And so the makers claim that this will allow you to increase control during movements, but more specifically to learn new skills and to increase your max strength and your technique more quickly. It makes your brain highly plastic. The neurons fire more easily, but also with greater strength, and then they create longer lasting neural connections as a result. Therefore, if you're trying to learn something like planche, like handstand presses, or if you want to improve your punching technique in martial arts, then in theory, this can help. For lifters, it's very similar to the post-activation principle. Basically, if you try and lift something really heavy, you then find it easier to lift something lighter. That's because you've used those neural connections and then now primed and more easy to access in future. I think it would probably make sense to do this with a coach who can make sure you're using the correct technique, therefore you're more quickly learning the best methods. As for whether it actually works, I can't say with 100% certainty. I haven't been testing it long enough. I'm trying to use it to see if I can improve my planche and bodyweight skills, my hand walking. At the same time, I'm trying to see if I can use it to increase the maximum number of pull-ups that I can do. And I'll let you guys know how that turns out in future, either in a video or in an article on the website. So stay tuned if you want to hear more about that. So like I say, not necessarily recommending this, just putting it in here because it's really interesting and cool and I wanted to talk about it. But yeah, all that other stuff, I highly do recommend. The dip bars, the powerlets, the gymnastic rings, the fat grips. If you combine all these things together, you can create some extremely awesome workouts, as I said. Do anything wearing a weighted vest and it becomes much more difficult, whether it's rope climbing or ring dips. Likewise, if you strap on a training mask, you'll make it more of a cardio workout, whatever it is you're doing. With these tools, there's limitless combinations. You can have fun, mess around and try out different things. Your workouts become far more inventive and interesting and creative, and you keep your body adapting. You prevent it from becoming set in its ways by giving it fresh new challenges every single day. So I hope you found this video useful and interesting, guys. If you did, then please leave a like, comment down below and let me know what your favourite training tools are, of course. Subscribe if you want more like this, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.